We're good. Mark, take it away.
Hey everyone, welcome to Overcaffeinated. If you haven't watched before, we say it's like The View, but not terrible. And we are coming to you virtually with our usual panelists, Justin Owen, the head honcho at Beacon. Justin, welcome back.
Thank you.
And we have an incredibly special guest today. I actually interviewed this man like 3-4 years ago when he was kind of more of a long shot outsider candidate for governor of Tennessee. And look at where we're at now, where after winning an upset primary, he rolled to a huge general election win, and now we are very, very lucky to have the 50th governor of the great state of Tennessee with us. Welcome, Governor Lee. We're happy to have you here.
Thank you, Mark. Justin, I appreciate it. Yep, glad to be here.
Let's talk about coffee first. That's what the show is. It's about.
Yeah.
And it sounds like from your staff, Governor Lee, that you're kind of a simple man. So tell us, what kind of coffee are you drinking today?
My coffee with me today. You know what? Here's my deal about coffee. I don't really care what kind of coffee it is. It just has to be so strong that most people won't drink it. Like I somehow have progressed slowly but surely into this syrupy coffee. My wife can hardly stand it. Nobody can. The problem with that is you just go to, any restaurant and their coffee's never any good because it's not strong enough. But I mean, it can be Folgers or it can be cheap coffee. It doesn't matter, but very strong. That's
because your spoon stands up in it, right?
What's that?
You want your spoon to stand up in it.
Yeah, exactly. No, I've put different stuff in it. I can drink it black, but I usually put cream and sugar. I really don't care as long as it's too strong.
Well, we'll have to let you try our blueberry coffee that Justin hates. But Justin,
first of all, you're lucky because when we're in person, Mark gets to pick the coffee, and it's always terrible. It's some kind of flavored coffee.
No, I will say that I don't like flavored. My wife likes to put in all kinds of flavors, and no flavor for me.
I too am simple. I'm actually drinking Nespresso coffee right now out of the Nespresso machine. It's Colombian. I like South American and Latin American coffee. So
I'm not quite that much of a snob.
I was going to say, that's very bougie. That's not simple.
I have no idea where my coffee comes from. Could come from, Dixon, as far as I know. But if it's strong, it's good.
The great coffee fields of Dixon.
There you go.
So much for Justin being a man of the people, man. We're really going down here with your bougie espresso machine. So I got this is great. It's called St. Nina's Coffee, which I'm drinking, but it's actually made by nuns. So it's made by small batches by the sisters at St. Nina's Monastery in Union Bridge, Maryland. My friend John sent it to me for Overcaffeinated, and it's delicious. It's really, really good.
That's cool.
Cheers. I'll be happy. Yeah, here's to the nuns and they're making coffee up there.
There you go. Cheers. So before we start, Justin, I'm going to kind of go to you, but it's worth noting that we're filming this on the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, granting women the right to vote. So Justin, before we start, tell us like the oversized role that Tennessee had in that big discussion 100 years ago.
Yeah, we had a really special role. I wrote a blog post about it this week talking about Harry T. Byrne, who was at the time the youngest state representative in history. And so during the debate, there had been 35 states that had ratified the amendment. So it really hinged on Tennessee to be that 36th and final state. The governor had called them into a special session to vote on this. And it was supposed to be a really close vote. And you could kind of tell where people were going to vote because they either wore a red lapel rose against suffragists or a yellow in favor of granting women the right to vote. And actually Representative Byrne came into the chamber with a red rose on when was expected to vote no, but then shocked everyone when he voted yes and actually cast the tie-breaking vote. And it later was discovered that he did so because his mom had sent him a letter pretty much telling him, you need to vote yes on this. So, of course, leave it to a strong mom to grant women the right to vote all across our country. And for Tennessee to be the epicenter of it. I know, Governor Lee, you and a lot of people across our state are really celebrating that 100th anniversary and Tennessee's role in it this week.
Yeah, we actually had a ceremony and event this morning having my yellow tie. My wife is the honorary chairman of the statewide suffragette committee. What's really interesting, I always like to talk about Tennessee leading the nation, and I believe that we can and we do in a lot of ways. There are a lot of things that happen in our state that are unique to us. At the time, evidently, most southern states were not even willing to take up the issue. So most believed that the decision would be made in New England or in one of the states where there had been a lot of contention over it, and they certainly didn't think a southern state would, first of all, would be engaged in this, but would be the deciding vote. So I'm proud of the fact that that our state was a leader then. I do really believe our state's a leader in the country in a lot of ways, but it was happening 100 years ago today.
It's really
Very
cool.
cool. So Tennessee's always been awesome. Who knew? So let's go here to a topic that is really contentious right now, but we're going to talk about civility in politics. Our friend David Plaza from the Tennessean has written a whole thing called Civility Tennessee, and we got to talk about what's happening to our country with people who disagree on policy. We see it on both sides, but Governor Lee, despite being a very popular governor, if you look at your ratings, everything's really good. You have some kind of far left outlets and some far left people really spewing kind of vitriolic words at you, calling you things like whatever, murder or whatever, because they don't agree with your policy, which is insane. First of all, does that kind of thing ever get to you when you say, I think I'm doing the right thing and I'm hearing these horrible things from these people who disagree with me? And secondly, what can we do to make it, to be back to the place where we treat each other with respect, even if we disagree on policy? Because that used to be the case. So I'm interested to hear from you.
Yeah. I came from the business world into this job, and and one of the things that you're not used to, or that you don't, it's not that you're not used to it, it's just that one of the things that doesn't really happen a lot in the business world is people recognize that if you can't agree to disagree, if you can't come together and negotiate contracts, if you can't figure out how it is that you're going to work together with clients or personnel or people, employees that you may not always be on the same page. If you can't do that, then you absolutely will not be successful. You come into this environment, and I actually, when I ran, I made a very clear decision not to be a negative campaigner. It was a little out of the ordinary, especially for a guy who had no chance to win in most political circles. But I didn't want to go that direction for a couple of reasons, just not who I am. But it also think it does not contribute well to the dialogue in this state and nationally. I still believe that. I believe you also see that I'm not, firing back at people that are firing at me. I don't spend a lot of time looking at how the vitriolic stuff out there that is being written about me or others. I think there are a lot more things that people agree upon than they disagree. And where they do disagree, if we actually want to move our country forward, then we ought to figure out a way to listen. So I have, one of the things I do, with all of the protests and all of the talk about racial reconciliation in this state, I decided to go across the state and hold meetings with African-American leaders. I've had 3 so far, and will continue to do that. I'll tell you, one of the things that's been incredibly valuable to me, it's not that I disagree with the people sitting in the room. I just don't understand. I don't know their viewpoint because I'm not an African-American guy. I haven't lived that way or grew up that way in America. I want to listen to something that I might not agree with, or even think a person that I don't think like they think, because I want to understand that. I think if people spent a little more time wanting to understand why someone could think that way, if you really disagree with them, I'd like to know why you really think that way. And you're never going to do that by, this sort of discourse that takes place right now. I think we have a great opportunity in this country actually to come together in some powerful ways. And I'll say one quick other thing about that. We make a big mistake in this country, especially in the political world, of politicizing everything. Wearing a mask, is that a liberal idea or a conservative idea? And then we have to choose, it's one or the other, and we fall on the side of whichever is our camp. That is so true of so many things that don't deserve to have that sort of scrutiny. And yet you see it happen all the time. You can watch the national news on whichever outlet you want to, and you throw up a subject and it either is liberal or conservative. It's either left or right. And I really don't subscribe to that. I'm going to work really, really hard in my administration to kind of go a different direction.
Well, the least surprising thing here is that Bill Lee is a much better man than I am, because I read those Tennessee Holler things. I'm like, oh my God, I hate these people. They're the worst. I can't believe they're saying these things. So Justin, what about you? I mean, people have talked about you, talked about your wife. I mean, talk about how do we get to the point where we can just talk about policy and say, you know what, you're a good person. We can disagree with this, but I don't think you're a bad person because we have a different opinion on policy.
You know, we've had luck reaching across the aisle and working with people that we disagree with on whether it's criminal justice reform or, you know, a number of issues, because we focus on policy, not politics. And we've also got this internal saying, we don't question politicians or call politicians names or question their motives. We focus on their policies and we criticize their policies. Frankly, that's their problem, not ours, right? Because it's a policy discussion and we're going to have disagreements, but you don't make it personal. But it's hard because everybody wants to just, you know, go below the belt and attack. And as the governor said, make things political that are like, I don't care what politics the companies that I buy from subscribe to. I don't care, you know, the type of coffee I drink and where, you know, what their politics are. I like those products because they're good products and I'm going to buy them or not buy them based off those preferences, not what their politics are. And so like, especially for people who are in politics all the time, it's exhausting when you can't escape it anywhere, right? Like other people at least have some outlets that they come into politics. We can't get away from it anymore because everything is politicized. And that is terrible, but I just go up to our cabin in Kentucky where there's no cell phone service and no internet and just check out for a week just to get away from it.
Assuming the governor there lets you actually come with the whole COVID.
Well, that's true. For a while, he didn't. Speaking of someone who's been very critical of our governor.
Well, I think it's a good thing. I commend David Plazas for talking about civility because I think that's important here. So
yeah, I do too.
Move on to small businesses, which is a big topic right now. And because of the government's response to COVID in a lot of states, it's likely that millions of small businesses will shut down and never reopen. I mean, I've seen study after study that says it could be up to 7.5 million nationally. And it seems like many on maybe the other side of the political spectrum are kind of ignoring the shutdowns and the effect they're going to have on small business and focusing just on health and safety. So my question to both of you is, how can we ensure that Tennessee small businesses don't shut down the same way they have elsewhere, but also protect the health and safety of our citizens? It's kind of a tough balancing act. So Governor, we'll start with you.
Yeah, it has been the balancing act, right? So at the beginning, we didn't know what was coming. We didn't understand. We didn't know what the pandemic was going to be. We didn't know how people were going to die. All you had were projections and models, and there was nothing on the ground. So you had to make a lot of decisions early based on a lack of information and data. I tried to track. I'm an engineer. I like data, and I follow data, and I want to make decisions based on data. With a lack of data, you got to make some initial decisions, and we did. And then we began to track that data. And it's what, you know, we did a stay-at-home order, for example, because as a small business guy, the idea of the government requiring me to close my business goes against philosophically what most of us actually believe should be happening, except in the case where there's an imminent public threat, right? So that's what you're faced with. Do we really have an imminent public threat here? We didn't know, sound like we did. We did that really pretty quickly. We determined that we now know a little more about what's happening here. It's why we were one of the last states to close, one of the first states to open back up. I also recognize that it's not just about people's lives, but their livelihoods. So there is all kinds of damage that happens in people's lives when their livelihoods are cut short. So we opened back up, and we opened back up with the Tennessee Pledge and, you know, ways to make it really safe. But we knew that our job was to mitigate the spread of COVID. We have it. It's going to happen. People are going to get it. Unfortunately, people are going to die. But we knew that we had to mitigate that. But at the same time, we had to keep our economy going. So we opened it back up and we let businesses start to move forward. But when the federal government decided to give states stimulus money through the CARES Act, one of the very first things we did was pull aside $200 million and designate it for small business relief, companies that are 10 million in revenue and below. And we developed a plan for that. We pushed it out. That was in addition to $200 million that we had put in the state budget for businesses to use against coronavirus relief. We had just announced last week $83 million more. So my belief about stimulus money is it ought to go to businesses, because that's how you're going to stimulate the economy. That's how you're going to keep them moving. That's how you're going to keep people's jobs coming back. And it's been heartbreaking to watch small businesses close in the midst of this. And we've worked really hard to do everything we can to keep that from happening in the first place, but also to help them rebuild the backbone of our economy.
And Justin, I mean, do you think that there's a difference too? When we talk about the economy, it's some people don't realize it's not the stock market. It's the mom and pop shops that are shutting down. I mean, that's what, when we talk about the economy, that's what we mean. It's not the rich billionaires. It's the people that me and you know who own a shop down the street that can't afford to do it. I mean, tell me what you think that the correct kind of balancing act of this is.
Yeah, well, it definitely is a balance. And like the governor said, you can protect both lives and livelihood. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And I think the people that have misjudged this, particularly other governors in some states, they are under this false assumption that they can just shut off and on the economy like it's a light switch. Well, you can't do that. That affects real people. And there's also this element of elitism of, well, if everybody just goes home and works on their laptop at the kitchen table for a few months, we'll be okay. For the vast majority of workers in our country, that's not feasible. They can't do that. Their work is in a plant. Their work is in a grocery store and in places where they have to physically be. And to say that they're not essential is really a slap in the face, because I've never met a person who said my paycheck's not essential to me. And credit to you, Governor, you did this because we initially had some distinction between essential and non-essential, but you didn't go the other way like certain governors where you can go into Home Depot and buy, a hammer and nails, but you can't buy gardening seeds to plant your own food. And that was just preposterous that we would have government officials dictating those kinds of things. And you ultimately scrapped that entirely and said, we're going to base your reopening whether you can protect public health and safety. Can you do social distancing, enforce masks, sanitize, do those things? And if so, if you can protect your workers and your customers, then you can be open, rather than trying to arbitrarily decide whether you're essential or non-essential. And I think you even said the phrase when you were pressed by the media on this, you said everyone is essential. And to try to distinguish essential versus non-essential really doesn't make sense. And I'm glad we were one of the first states that really moved away from that distinction, while some states are still doing it.
I think one of the things you said there about a false choice is really it. That this whole pandemic has created a lot of conversation around what I think have been false choices. You either go to school or you stay home and be safe. That's a false choice. That is not that's not the issue here. It's you keep 1 million children home and it's not safe. And then this other thing about how it's real world. I mentored a guy who came out of prison. Y'all have heard me tell that story, and I got very involved in criminal justice reform as a result of that. This guy and I are still friends now. He's been out 10 years. He tells me, we're texting the other day because I wanted to go out and, let's go have dinner. My wife's out of town and we'll get together. He said, well, yes, I will, but I'm not working this week because Jeremiah's home from school. They canceled his school and I can't work because I can't find daycare for him because Jeremiah's autistic. And so you can't just drop him off at any daycare center. And it was just a reminder to me, this is real world stuff. And Jeremiah's not safe to stay home by himself. And I just, this false choice that people have made of you've got to either do this or you've got to do that. No, we've got to do both. And we've got to do it safely, and we've got to advance and move forward. And we've got to learn how to, sort of go ahead and storm the beach. I mean, we can't just sit back out here until all of us die. We have to move forward and accomplish what needs to get done in the state.
And I'm rarely critical of the national media, but the way that they kind of have propped up people like Governor Cuomo and Governor Wolf, who have really not done a good job, while meanwhile ignoring we talk about Governor DeSantis in Florida and what we're doing with here in Tennessee. I mean, these are kind of the states that people should be following, not New York and Pennsylvania, because we've had the best results overall. So I'm going to go to something you just talked about, Governor Lee, which is the kind of the K-12 schools. So you do believe they should be open. Can you tell me why that you think that these should be open and related to COVID, why you think it's the best thing moving forward to make sure the kids go back to school?
Yeah. I'll give you a couple reasons. I'll give you 5 or 6 reasons why kids ought to be in classroom. And by the way, the CDC agrees with this, and the American Academy of Pediatrics agrees with this, and have been supportive of the fact that in-person learning is the preferred model, so long as you can do it in a way that provides for the health and safety of those that are involved in that, teachers, and we can talk about what we've done to do that. But number one, academically, kids do better in-person learning. No argument about that. There's no doubt about it. Kids do better face-to-face learning. And we already have enough deficit in learning that we don't need to add to that. And every day kids are out of the classroom, our kids get further behind. But besides the academics, mental health services, the kid I just referenced that is autistic who gets mental health services through their school and doesn't get them when they're sitting home. Kids with disabilities that really are only served well when for some of the services they get that through their schools. Nutrition, kids get that through their schools. The child abuse reporting has gone down by 27% in our state since the schools closed. I don't think that's probably because child abuse has gone down. It's because the reporting mechanism through teachers has gone down. There are so many reasons why it is not safe or best for children to stay home if we can provide them a safe alternative, which includes in-person learning and provide a safety environment. But I'll tell you, the main reason I think it ought to happen is because this ought not to be up to the government. A parent has a right to choose how their kid's educated. And if they want their child to go in person to a school, they understand the risk, they understand what a district has done to prepare themselves for it. Parents need choices, which is why we've given an online option for every kid in Tennessee. If a parent doesn't want to do in person, every district, every kid has the opportunity to do remote learning. So there's a bunch of reasons why I think it's the right thing to do. And I feel very strongly about that. We've worked really hard to get school districts open across the state.
It's interesting how we have people let's say, oh yeah, we listen to everything the CDC says, except when we disagree. Then we'll say, forget what they're saying. That don't trust the science in that case. So Justin, let's move on. And it's kind of talking about school still, but college football. That's the big debate in this country right now. It seems like whether we should play college football or not. The Pac-12 and Big Ten have said we're not playing, although that may be changing with the best player in college football saying he wants to play from Ohio State. But the SEC, Big 12, and ACC are all going to play. Do you think they should play this year? And if they don't, will that make you feel better because Tennessee won't have a losing record again? I'm interested.
Well,
Wow.
You can't lose if you don't play, right?
Right.
But so, yeah, I think they should play. I mean, I can't imagine a fall without college football. It's been brutal enough already dealing without sports. Although I now have my 2D version of me, cardboard cutout, as season Braves tickets, and I saw myself on TV like 7 times last night, so that was pretty cool. So there's weird things you can do to be entertained with sports when you can't be there live. But we really do need college football. And it's not, again, going back to the essential versus non-essential, it's not just a game. For a lot of these kids, this is their livelihood as well. If they don't play this season, it's going to significantly impact their earnings over time. And so, that's why you see quarterbacks and, players who are going to go high in the draft, but otherwise may just suffer as a result, saying, I want to play. I want to take that risk. And there are ways that you can do that, just like the SEC and the ACC have proven. I will say I cannot stand Steve Spurrier, but I agree with him that, let the other conferences do whatever they want and let the ACC and SEC champion play it out for the national championship because it's going to be one of them anyway.
So Governor Lee, when it comes to college football, what do you think should happen? I mean, we know obviously Auburn will lose to a couple 5 and 7 teams again, like normal. But tell me, do you think that they should play or not?
Well, let me tell you this. You need to ask my wife because she said, if I have to sit up one more night and watch you play reruns of old college football games. I said, we're going to be doing this every night through the fall. This is my protest in order until we get football. So yeah, we should play football. I mean, if we are going to open our businesses and we are going to, make every effort to open our schools and our universities, then if kids want to play football, they ought to play football. And the kids don't want to play, they cannot play. I do think that the prospect, and this is it's a bit of a side note, but the prospect of playing football, like I've talked with Donnie Plowman, as you know, and I'm meeting with Philip Fulmer, and I talked with a couple of other Southern governors this week that have SEC teams to talk about how it is that we can encourage and support the commissioner and the SEC and conferences across the country to do this. If we can do things correctly, then we should be doing things that make us be hopeful. Frankly, honestly, for me, I fall without college football. It's like, gosh, what a bummer that's going to be. I can live with that, but it's going to be a bummer. Now that I think we're going to do it, I've got all kinds of hope for this fall. I'm excited about it. I'm, figuring out which games I'm going to go to. By the way, we did a race in Bristol, Tennessee, a NASCAR race, 30,000 fans. NASCAR had very clear guidelines about how they wanted to do it. People masked up, they social distance in the stadium. It was park capacity. But I went to that race and I watched, along with 30,000 people, a NASCAR race. And then the health officials 3 weeks later came back and said there's no known clustered COVID cases associated with that event. So this can happen, and it can happen safely. I believe that we absolutely should go forward with it.
Absolutely. I mean, I know during the bubble, the NBA has had 0 cases so far and all the time they've been playing. So that is great to know.
So Mark has trashed Auburn and Tennessee.
He's an NBA
fan. Fess up. Come on.
I'm a Notre Dame fan, which I know they are.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But what's cool about Auburn is when we're talking about all these people, it's like, should athletes get paid? Auburn was way ahead of the curve there. They paid Cam Newton.
Yeah. It's well worth it. Well worth it, wasn't it? Worked out.
Oh, yeah. That's the best investment they've made. So let's go. So some big personal news for me is Nickelback came out with a new CD last week. A funny tweet I saw was like, just when you thought 2020 couldn't get any worse, Nickelback comes out with the CD and really shows you it can. But I love Nickelback despite everyone else, the public's incorrect opinion. So with that being said, I'm interested in both of you. What is your favorite, guilty pleasure musical act that other people would make fun of you for liking? Somebody'd be like, oh, God, how do you like that? It doesn't make any sense. So we'll start with you, Justin. Who is a musical act that you like that nobody else does?
First off, it's telling you said Nickelback came out with a CD because the people who listen to Nickelback are probably still listening to it on CD.
A record they came out with this week.
I don't take this as like a real guilty pleasure, but I love me some Dwight Yoakam. And people who know me, know that I'm kind of like a widespread panic fish head. Like I listen to hippie music, and so they're surprised when I say like country music, rockabilly, Dwight Yoakam. And you make fun of me for that. Most people don't, but I'll take that since you do.
I need something to make fun of you for. But that Dwight Yoakam's good. What about you, Governor Lee? Who's like a guilty pleasure?
So I don't know that it would be somebody that people wouldn't. Because I'm 60, right? I'm old, so it's going to be somebody that was old. And I have this interesting thing of loving country music and having grown up with it. And I'm kind of, I grew up in the country. And I mean, I used to have a record of Dolly Parton when I was young and would kind of stare at it. And I love her. And that's been a very cool thing, by the way, is to actually get to meet her. And
I bet.
Maybe people are surprised when they look on my phone and they see me listen to Rolling Stones music, which I've been to I love the Rolling Stones. I love their music. I love, listening to them. I went to a bunch of concerts of theirs. So yeah, that's my diversity in music love is from Dolly to Jagger.
And I think Governor Lee's a secret Florida Georgia Line fan. He's just afraid to admit it.
There you go.
Okay, so we're going to kind of go to a little fun part. We're going to do this or that. We're going to give you 2 choices, and you have to say a 1 sentence why you prefer that. So we'll start with you, Governor. A mullet or a mohawk? If you had to pick a mullet or a mohawk, what do you prefer?
Well, I had a mullet, but I'll take a mohawk if I had to have one today. So
Justin?
I kind of have the wings when my hair gets long, so I'll go with the mullet. It's sort of like a hybrid style mullet, but
Kind of like the Joe Dirt. Is that what you're looking at there?
yeah.
Yeah, perfect. A better vacation spot, the mountains or the beach? Governor Lee?
Oh, the mountains. Absolutely. Yeah. The mountains for a lot of reasons.
Justin?
Totally mountains. I love mountains more than anything.
Oh, man, we need some disagreement here. You're both wrong on both these so far, but that's okay. A worst outfit accessory, a fanny packs or jorts? If you had to do the jorts or fanny packs, what's worse?
What's worse?
Yeah, jean shorts.
Oh, gosh. Jean shorts are worse.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Are you a fanny pack guy, Governor Lee? Do you have a fanny pack?
You gave me an option of two bad choices. Come on now.
Justin, what do you go with?
So he's used to trashing Alabama fans. They all wear jorts, right? A funny quick aside on that. So when
you're getting into Alabama fans now. Hey, how about we just be very clear here? I love the SEC. Okay, so I grew up in a household of parents that both went to Vanderbilt. I was a Tennessee fan and have all kinds of friends. Sister, brother went to UT. I went to Auburn. I love the SEC. There is one.
Me too. Mark trashes on the SEC.
Oh,
but,
God.
we'll let those national
Notre Dame. What do you expect?
Okay, so Justin, which one do you hate more?
I'm going to go with fanny pack just because, when the CMA Fest people come into town, it just is overwhelming. And I leave town. I go to the mountains every time.
Now, let me just say, I love the CMS Fest people, and I wish they were back in town right now. We're going to get them back, too.
I'm fine with them being here. I just don't want to be here at the same time.
I think Justin refers to them as the fanny packers, if I'm not mistaken, all the people that come. Is that right? So,
I love them.
Last one. Which tight end will end up having a better NFL career? Derrick Henry or Eddie George? Who do you think will have a better career when all's said and done?
Derrick Henry.
Wow.
Yeah, I do. That guy's ridiculous. I was at the Baltimore game. I went to the Baltimore game last week. Plus, as a guy who has been and is an Auburn fan, I had to watch him. So I've been watching him for a long time. That guy is a beast and a machine, and he will have a great career. I mean, it's hard to compare with Eddie George. What a same description, but I think he might do it.
Yeah, it's just such a different league now, right? Like the offense is different. I think he has a chance to best Eddie. Although, if he's just got to stay healthy, and only time will tell.
Yeah,
he's done well so far, but if he has any kind of injury, I think he could go downhill very quickly. And then I would say Eddie.
He's such a big guy in college. Looked like he was a grown man, but he's like 12-year-old running them over.
So big.
So that's our fun part. So we're going to end here. We have a couple questions for you, Governor Lee. And the first one is, this is your first time ever serving in public office. You were a businessman before this. So I'm interested what it's like being governor compared to what your expectations were coming in. I'm just interested in kind of your experience so far.
Yeah, and I've been asked that a lot. And I usually do say, I didn't – it's hard to have expectations of something that you don't know anything about as far as the job itself. I tried not to have expectations. I remember telling Maria, I don't really want to think through what it's going to be like to be governor because it will be so different than what I think about. So my expectations have been surprised a little bit by how political this job really is. I always said I'm not a politician. I guess I am now because I'm in politics in a heavy way, but we referenced this a little bit earlier with the divisiveness of conversation. The degree to which things are run through a political filter in decision-making is surprising to me. It surprised me. It's so foreign to what happens outside of politics. It's so foreign to what happens outside of the sort of government and politics realm. And I've lived outside and ran my campaign saying, hey, I'm an outsider. This is not what I have ascribed to or how I've run my life or how I've lived my life. It's so true. The outside world of this thing is really different. And it's not the politics of the job that I'm in are immeasurable from my perspective. That came as a surprise to me. One of the things I like to do, you talk about, Justin, you talk about going up to Kentucky. I live on a farm out in the country, not too far from here. So I go home to the farm every weekend. I try to, and I make it a point to connect with all my family and friends out there that are not political and that don't really know what I do every day and don't care that much about it. I make a point to kind of sit and talk to them, and I'll ask them questions about some of the things I'm dealing with. And you find out pretty quick that regular people don't run everything through a political filter. And those of us who live in this world I live in now, we think everything runs through that. But that was the biggest difference in expectation. I viewed this job more as a role of government and leadership than politics. And I discounted the role that politics plays in everything in government and leadership.
Absolutely. So we have to let you get going here. We have one more quick question. What is, in one sentence, your biggest accomplishment as governor and your biggest regret?
I'll give you a couple of big accomplishments. I'm real proud of the pro-life work we did. It's very important to me. Real proud of the educational things we did. Vocational education, the GIVE Act, near and dear to my heart. Education savings accounts, parent choice, especially for minority kids and low-income kids, very deeply important to me. And when you talk about regrets, I don't know about regrets, but disappointments, the disappointment that the ESA things held up, I think that's going to be temporary, but I expect that'll go forward. And then finally, the disappointment that occurred this year when we had criminal justice reform and things that are really also very important to me kind of had to all be set aside because of COVID and economic collapse. And, your team has been focused forever on something. You've had things in your heart and mind all these years, and then boom, you have to set all that aside. We need to set it aside. We're doing what we got to do right now, given the circumstances that came. But it was pretty disappointing to watch all that, to push all that to the side and deal with what we got before us. But that would be it.
Well, you've done a great job, Governor. We're very thankful that you joined us today, and we need to let you get to your next meeting here. But thank you so much for the time, Justin. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Governor.
Proud to be here. Thanks for what y'all do very much. You've been doing it a long time. Proud of you and grateful to be a partner.
Great. Have a good one. And we will see you next month in Everett Cabinet. Thanks again, Governor Lee.
Good. Thank you.